throughout that when someone is in a state of simcha, of joy, you could accomplish greatness and achieve things that normally you wouldn't be able to. You're so happy, you're just, like they say, bursting at the seams. You're it goes, we say, beyond all measurements and calculations. So this is the time of this simcha. The joy of being part of this. Oopsie, hang on one second. There's something out here. Yeah, I'm just hooking up to Facebook. Yeah, my computer got a little slow, so just give me a moment. Oh, here. Okay. So how about like this? So this is what I'm thinking of what we can do tonight is, of course, the Parsha, Rashis. Also, our normal thing that we're learning, which is about Mitzvah Shabbos. Shabbos in general, specifically Mitzvah Shabbos. And all the more so that this is in fact this is the Parsha, indeed all of creation is all about the resting after creation, which is why we keep Shabbos. So, and then there is also what happens when that after Shabbos leaves, right? So hopefully we'll be able to cover a bit about Motzei Shabbos too, because we haven't actually focused on that in the last couple of weeks because of the Yom Tovim, and also showing how that is connected to things related to the Havdalah. If you remember, last time that we were speaking about Motzei Shabbos and Malava Malchus specifically, we were focusing on the body. How is the body affected on Shabbos, and what's happening Motzei Shabbos with the body, right? If you recall that we spoke about how Motzei Shabbos, there's the luz bone, L-U-Z, or Lamed Vav Zayin, that the etzem luz never corrupts, and that becomes the kernel origin of the regeneration of the body of Chiyat HaMesim, of resurrection. And that it's specifically the Mava Malka that's nourishing that's giving the highest energy to our body. It's that from Mava Malka. That's the one time of the week that the luz receives nourishment, and that allows it to continue being in its retain its essence and be able to become the source for the Chiyat HaMesim. But that is about the body. Now, what about the soul? So the soul is also going through an interesting process from Shabbos to Motzei Shabbos. If you remember, we spoke when we were focusing on Shabbos state and Shabbos soul. We spoke about Neshama Yisera, additional surplus soul or expanded soul that we receive on Shabbos. And hopefully when we get to it, we'll see what is happening Motzei Shabbat when this extra soul leaves. What does it mean it's leaving its body? And what is it, what does the extra soul mean? What do we mean by that? So, and also, how is that related to the Havdalah specifically? Okay. And the reason why this is really appropriate to be discussing it this week is because this in this parsha we have Mmsh discussing about how the soul enters the human into us, into the humans, specifically Adam, right? By Yipach Ba'ato Nishmas Chayin, the God blew in Adam's nostrils, soul of life, right? So the whole idea of receiving a soul happened right before Shabbat, Friday afternoon, the first day of last day of creation, and with that, Adam went into Shabbat, and Shabbat even brought him another extra soul state, and then, and in fact, after Shabbos, that represented also he was already out of the Garden of Eden. He was banished already Friday evening from the Garden of Eden, basically right before Shabbos. And so much so, the Medrash says, Adam thought because of the sin that he would not live the next day, and that Adam even dug his own grave that first Friday night and stayed in there. But then in the morning, the sun came up, and he was so joyful that he's still alive. So that he composed. This is what it says. He composed in Tehillim, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, Tov Lahodat L'Hashem L'Zam L'Shimcha Elyon. Of course, we know more traditionally that King David composed Tehillim, but in a way, King David could have been echoing what already came down through the ages from from Adam. So what we see is so Mmsh, he was in a state of just grateful that his soul came back. It's like it was his own modani. And but then even with him at that night, let's say it means after Shabbat, there was also the departure of the Shabbat state of the soul. So there must have been another. He must have been again grateful when he woke up Sunday morning too. That part is not brought in the Medrash, but yeah, there's no guarantee, right? How did anyone know that? At the beginning of creation, how long they'll live? And then, but we know he lived for hundreds of years eventually. Him and subsequent generations, right? Each one lived hundreds of years, all the way till Noach. In fact, if you calculate how many years is the narrative from Bereshis till Noach, just the first parsha of this parsha Bereshis of the Torah, how many years does it cover? Does anyone know? All right. So the answer is, if you make the calculation, it's something like more than 1,600 years. Okay. It's the parsha that covers the most time, in the narrative time itself, from any of the parshas. So it's really covering a lot, and the themes of the parsha are really based. It's very essential and it's like origins, right? Origins of all of existence, creation itself, of all the basics of everything. Then discussion all about the human, and then as mentioned, humans' interaction with with our environment, and then about human corruptibility and even theological concepts like free choice and reward and punishment, and goes on with that, and then that even goes on to about the Nephilim, the fallen angels at the end of the parsha, and the setup of of what's going to lead to Noach. So also, of course, the story of Cain and Hevel, first time that there was taking of life and sibling rivalry. So Mmsh, I mean, we could spend half a year just on Bereshis. In a way, a lot of what we discussed over the years here, in a way, are these themes of Bereshis, right? Remember, we spoke so much about the creation of all of existence, the idea of the infinite, from the essence of God to the Ein Sof infinite, then the Tzimtzum that happened for contraction in order to make more limited light and energy flows to create our physical world. And also, of course, the theme of Shabbos is like so essential. It's the very base of it all. So in a way, we've been living with Parsha Bereshis so much anyways. So it's all the more highlighted now. And again, especially because with Motzei Shabbat, and hopefully we'll be discussing about the human soul, which is also in our Parsha. So let's get to it. And I'm just being like sort of a bit open in how we could go about how we will be going about this now, both in our discussion. So here's what a good part of me wants to do. Does want to look at texts both tonight for some reason, and so there is, for example, even on this concept we just mentioned about God creating the world and creating it through the state of Tzimtzum to create the world. So yes, in Chabad they speak about this in copious detail and almost technical, Lurianic Kabbalah and such. But if you delve into the early and other Hasidic masters, or beginning with the Baal Shem Tov and going through others like Levitzka Berditchev, or Mmsh, or others, Abderov and others, you'll see that they discuss this concept of Tzimtzum and God, to create the world, in each one in their own, with their own flavor, and just to the point, and showing how that relates to how to live our lives, not just some abstract like astrophysics that we're trying to discover through the Webb telescope, but really what it means for us. What does it mean when we go in a state from infinite illumination to absolute void? Or and then what does it mean to rediscover the light and bring it out? And then how do we illuminate not just ourselves, but that very world environment that we were brought into, as mentioned before, La'avda L'Shamra. The word La'avda, to work, in Spartana Chassidus is like Eretz Avunda, means it's labor. It's not just work. It's like what the term Eretz Avunda means, like tanners who are working the leather through and through. It could be very sweaty, even smelly. Yeah. By the way, I'm reading Aaron's messages in the chat, so thank you. Just I'm reading them. And if there is at any point you do want to share anything from the Tchina or other things, let me know. Yeah. And by the way, so you mentioned here the common theme must be the dream of ultimately overcoming death. some of that is true. Overcoming death is, it does say because of the sin that there is death. I don't know the overcoming death part. Not sure. For those that dream, just to note, I don't know if this is related to your comment, Aaron, but just remember that the creation of Eve, of Chava, was during a slumber, or even dream state. Was dreaming partner, and therefore future generations, dreaming it into reality in a way. All right. Yes, Esther.
I wanted to ask you about that story with Adam and David HaMelech, where Adam gave him like 70 years of his life.
Right. Right. So that's I think it's in a medrash. It's because he was supposed to die. Because I don't. The reason had to do with something happened to David before David. I remember this also from years ago. I don't remember the details, but that is even in fact why we say that Mmsh that David says that a person's life is 70 years, right? That's the amount. They say the word Adam itself is an acronym for Adam, David, and Moshe.
Wow.
So there is a connection of all three. And
I remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember learning that on that first day when Adam was banished, he was shown David HaMelech somehow, maybe in relation to that chapter of Tehillim that was composed. And Hashem also showed him that he was going to die shortly after he was born. And he said, I want to give a portion of my life to him. So he lived for 930 years and gave David 70.
Right. So yeah, I don't, in other words, this is, yes, the Medrash says it. I'm just trying to remember the reason why David wouldn't have lived more than just a few hours originally.
Right.
I don't know if it has to do with him or something of his ancestors. But
okay.
I'll you know when it finds
Thank you.
Kaval. Yeah, but thanks for that, certainly reminder. And there, when you have 1,000 years, 70 is right, less than 10%. So Mmsh giving everyone brachas of great life and the ikers to accomplish what we need to with all the years that we have involved. Yeah. So so this is what I'm feeling. I hope you won't mind if we just learn some text together. I'm just that's where I'm feeling now a bit. Or we don't have to go through all the word, go through and talk. So fine. How about we start with Levi Yitzchak Barditchev? Okay. That, actually before Levi Yitzchak Barditchev, of course, the Baal Shem Tov. So let me see if I can find. It's ready here. So in okay, there's an actual almost philosophical Torah here of the Baal Shem Tov, which you wouldn't really associate with the Baal Shem Tov. This is from the all about why the philosophical question: why didn't God create the world before He did? Right? And what motivated God to go from the not even wanting to create a world and then creating? Being that God is immutable, so what does it mean? Before God created the world, God didn't want to create the world. Then one day, so quote unquote, so to speak. God woke up, he wants to create a world, so to speak. Well, you know what I mean? What compelled God at that moment to do A? So it's two questions. Why did God create the world when he did? And B, how could God even create a world and go from the moment before creating the world and then creating a world? That shows change. To which the Baal Shem Tov answers that God is not like a human, that where the human acquires knowledge, right? That there was a point before it didn't have it, and then there's the acquisition of it, right? Also, the human is imperfect. Right? And the human has specific needs, like for shelters, it needs to build a house, etc. But God's knowledge is not acquired, but it is existentially part and parcel of the divine. And God is also perfect. So therefore, the Baal Shem Tov says God's want to create the world wasn't something that happened brand new from point second one of all creation, or the second before of creation. But it was primordial. Even the want of creating the world was part and parcel with God's primordiality. And that very want of this specific time was part and parcel of that always existent wanting to create the world at this time. So therefore, there was no difference. So and he also connects it. That is also the whole reason, desire to create let's say, the world to come, the world that is all of Shabbos, which it means that it's a more better and more improved world than what we have now. That also was that is the purpose, to eventually create this world, to have that ultimate messianic, Geula way of the world. So the question is, why, if that is the ultimate goal, why didn't the God set it up that it should happen right away? Why do we have to go through whole gullahs and everything for that? So the answer is, it's like Shabbos. Shabbos, you have to first work 6 days of the week, then you have Shabbos. Meaning that even though God knows what the ultimate outcome is, and this, and just like God's foreknowledge to do something, so that is part and parcel of what will eventually happen. So even though God knows that it could have been different, but the will itself makes it not play it out. And then he goes in detail all about free will and predetermination. But I just did it very quickly in just the first part, just to show you that, a lot of times we associate Baal Shem Tov with like all these very Chassidish theories, but once in a while you see he even delves into certain philosophical discussions. So if I recall, there's a part. So here back to about Tzimtzum. So this is what the Baal Shem Tov says. Bereishis bara Elikim, beginning God created the world. That initially God couldn't create the world because the infinite light, so to speak, the infinitude of God was so overwhelming, unfolded forever. So how did God create a withdrawal of the light? So that happened by the Nistakla Kadosh Baruch Hu b'Meiser Rishayim, Nistamsim ha'er, by looking at what will happen when the Rishayim, the quote unquote wicked, what they will do. That itself created a tzimtzum, a withdrawal, or holding back the light. Meaning, it's almost like someone who has a great excitement and vision to do something amazing, right? To accomplish. And really is about to go out there and just splurge energy to do it. And then someone comes and points out, it's not so simple. There's going to be certain interference. There's certain people going to get in the way. I don't know. Let's say there's a construction site. Someone wants to work, but then you find out that there's squatters there, what have you. Yeah. So that in itself creates this restraint of going out full force. Because you realize that there's difficulties in the process, or there's even certain negative aspects that will take place. So that in itself creates a certain limiting of just letting it all spill out. So that's what happened with all of creation too, by God contemplating, quote unquote. That's the term is here in Stakel. I think this is based on the Medrash. That created the Medrash is, if I recall, I think it's also related to the famous Medrash, and there's different versions of it. And Rashi brings it down too. And in the beginning, God wanted to create the word. The word is there. Then in the beginning, God wanted to create the world with din, judgment. But then saw that the world cannot exist, and that is when God then incorporated kindness from din to chesed too. And then there created balance. Balance was brought into the universe. Another Medrash brings the example of if you put only hot water into a glass cup, it will shatter it, or even cold. But even cold will freeze it up. But when you combine the hot water with cold water, then the cups remain solid. So in a way too, that if we have only chesed shining, it'll be overwhelming. Only din creates too much of that harshness. Being too judgmental, the world cannot exist. Everyone, God will, be so scrutinizing, right? I mean, it's amazing how, in a way, that it took all the way to Noah's times, over 1,600 years, for there even be the flood, and for God's response for people's behavior. Because it really, on some level, if it was only din, then right at the very beginning of the sin of the tree of knowledge, or later with Cain and Hevel and other things, already there would have been. God may have pulled the plug, say, I don't need this, right? But no, God went ahead and created the world with all of its flaws, and even with the setup that there will be sin and wickedness in the world. In fact, there's another Medrash that speaks about that we are set up to sin. There's a verse that says, Neira lila b'nei Adam, how trepidifying it is, this plot, meaning this plan, this setup, so to speak, on humans. That, in other words, it's not even that the reason why there's sin in the world is because of the tree of knowledge and Adam and Chava, but that itself is an extension. This is the way it's brought down in Kabbalah, especially the Arizal, that the sin of the tree of knowledge is the byproduct of the diminishment of the moon, Miyat Lavana, and that known quibble between the moon and the sun. Initially, the moon was co-equal to the sun, and then they butted planets or suns or whatever, and then the moon was demoted, right? So that Miyut Halavana is already the origin for all deficiency in the world, and that in itself, even the diminishment of the moon, comes from the Tzimtzum itself. of the infinite light. So all aspects that we have, that there could be, there's even the possibility of there being something of not behavior, imperfect behavior from our end here down on earth. That is coming all the way from the Tzimtzum. Now, at the same time, we're not saying that we all have to sin either, because we're also empowered to counterforce that. Right? That's where free will comes in, and now we're working through, to make ourselves better people, in order not to fall into those realms. So what Baal Shem Tov is saying here almost is that even before God actually created the world, being that God knew that there will be the wicked, and as mentioned, that people will inevitably, there will be those who will all at some point mess up something, but some more than others, of course. And so just that precognizance, divine precognizance, where it's heading, that in itself created a restraint of the infinite, of God himself, as infinite light energy. So that is how the Tzimtzum itself came to be, by Nistakal Kadosh Baruch Hu Meiser Shayim. All right. So God looks at the wicked, turns the lights off. But then how is the light reintroduced? As we know, in the way that Arizal it describes the Tzimtzum, after the Tzimtzum, then God returns and brings back the infinite light, only this time in the form of a thin, long line that draws down. And that becomes the main line of energizing all the worlds that are created after the Tzimtzum. So what brings out that the light should come back, albeit in limited form, into the void of the Tzimtzum. So now the Baal Shem Tov continues, V'yistakel b'maiset tzadikim, v'nimshach kav chayim. And God, quote unquote, contemplated, gazed into the future, into the works of the righteous, and that activated light again to bring down not just life of vitality for the world, for everyone. So this is beside mati v'loy mati. This is in the mystery of reaching and not reaching. And this is another very interesting concept. In Kabbalah, it's in Kabbalah and various places, and that the interaction of the light, the infinite light, with the source, or other spirit realms, let's say souls of the righteous, such, and maybe even angels, is a way that you reach, you oscillate, you go up, about to reach it, but then you come back down. Right? You get close enough that then until it gets too intense, and then it's almost like Icarus going to the sun, but not getting burned. You just, before you get burned, you come back down. And that creates this flow rhythm, almost like AC/DC electric, And this is related to the Ratzei V'Shuv, the famous Ratzei V'Shuv that says the angels B'chayis Ratzei V'Shuv, in flight up and then returning. That's the Mati V'Lei Mati. So that's similar here, meaning that there is the polars of God, of the light, of the Ein Sof. So when God is emphasizing the deeds of the wicked, Hashem withdraws, goes away. The light itself leaves. But then you think of the righteous, and the light comes back. So that's again creating a certain flow, motion of the light itself, shining out and to create the world. This idea of mati v'lei mati is also related to the soul and the body. The connection of the soul with the body, really, the soul is so opposite. It's pure spirit, and the body is totally flesh and bones. and what's their connection. So there are discussions of how there are realms of the soul that are, sometimes it says that there's an overriding third power that's uniting them together. Power that does wonders, Pella, to make the three. And that's why also at the end of the prayer, at the blessing, after we go to the bathroom, we say, this idea of the Pella, wonder, is the greatest miracle, that the soul becomes one with the body. So much so until we say that it's not just the soul is living through the body, but the body itself is alive. Big difference. Say the soul is just residing in the body, but we say no. We say that the body is alive, and that is that in itself is that great accomplishment. It's this coincidence of opposites, as medieval philosophers earlier would call it, bringing out two opposite things together. At the same time, there is our bodies are vessels for the soul. All right. Moreover, we even say that there's certain traits that we associate with bodily sensory functions that are still there even if it's the soul without body. The ideas of the soul hearing or soul seeing. It says even if the person doesn't see the mazel, the person's mazel sees. So there is an ultimate way that the soul does merge and become one with the body. So too, the soul of the whole universe is also, which is the infinite Ein Sof, that is what creation is doing. It's bringing the soul of the cosmos into the physical world. That also takes great accomplishment. You and I cannot do it, right? That's for sure not. Okay. So you see here how the Baal Shem Tov isn't getting too philosophical or even Kabbalistic. What is the Ein Sof? What is the Tzimtzum? He's just showing how it's connected to human behavior. And let's look at the next one also, related to Baal Shem Tov's take on Tzimtzum. I heard from the Rab Mechiach, the rabbi who gives over Musar. I think this is an allusion to Yosef Yaakov Yosef Polna, that told us Yaakov Yosef, which he printed. He's the first one to print at any Torahs in the Baal Shem Tov. So this Sefer Truas Chay is bringing down from the Toldus Yaakov Yosef, who said in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, to explain what is Tzimtzum that's mentioned by the Kabbalists. That when God will arose to be good to his creations, so here he's saying a little reverse, that first point was God wanted to create a universe to do good. To whom? To the righteous, to the tzaddikim. So in fact, thinking of the future acts of goodness, of virtue, of tzaddikim, that's what motivated, so to speak, God to even begin to consider creating the world. Right? To create a world. And then God realized, so to speak, that if it's all 100% just chesed, compassion, then the whole world cannot exist. It's like if you let kids eat candy day and night. Therefore, there had to be a tzimtzum. And how did that come about? Then God gazed into the future acts of iniquity of the wicked, that which will bring vura, severity, harsh judgments to the world. So that by itself brought out of the Tzimtzum, and then God was able to create the world. Okay, just showing you here how the Baal Shem Tov is taking certain Kabbalistic concepts and showing what's related to us. Okay, I see Esther, your hand is up. I don't know if it's up from earlier. Also welcoming Dana who tuned in and Yehuda, welcome. So Esther, was there anything you wanted to say? Or was it
No,
from before?
it was from before.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
And now just welcome Dana and Yehuda. Great to have seen you, Yehuda, over Yom Tiv. Shout out. Yes, great. I'm sorry, Dana, we didn't meet up. I only saw your messages after Yom Tov.
No worries. Thank you. It was
Okay,
great to meet you on Yom Kippur.
Right. Great.
Send a postcard. Next time we'll send you a postcard. You could read the postcard on Yontif. So they could say, okay, I'm going to be in Crown Heights at 8:00, and it says it on the postcard.
Great. By the way, incidentally, Aaron, thank you very much. Aaron placed the link in the chat of the Zohar discussing the 70 years that Adam gave to King David. Okay, if you want, let's look at it now. Why not? I'm just like, again, as I mentioned before, I'm in a text mood tonight. So this is the Zohar, volume 1. Actually, there's a bit of a riff with Yaakov. This is actually brought down in Gemara, I think Baba Basra, but the Zohar brings down here that it says that whoever would look at Yaakov, it was like you were looking at the speculum or the great shining object of light. Because the beauty of Jacob was like the beauty of Adam, first human. Apparently, that Adam was the most, being the first human. He was like the model or prototype, so to speak, right? So it was the best, the quality, best looking, and so on. And Yaakov had that same beauty. All right. And then Rabbi Yosef says that I heard whoever sees Yaakov in his dream, I think that means embraced or being surrounded by great light, will have longevity. Okay. Then the Zohar continues. Rabbi Shimon Amar, right? Number one rabbi of the Zohar said, Ho Itmar, David Malka ad loy hava lechaim klal. This is what we learn, that King David, even before he was born, he was not supposed to have life, meaning he was supposed to have been, I suppose, stillborn or something like that. If not for the fact that Adam gave King David 70 years of his life. And that is how King David lived for 70 years. Whereas Adam's life was 1,000 years minus 70, 930. Meaning together, Adam and King David made up 70 years. And this is connected to the verse that says in Psalms, in Tehillim 21, Chaim shal mimcha, life was asked for you. You gave him long days. Who asked for this life and who received it? That's King David. So now the Zohar goes in a little more detail. When God created the Garden of Eden, he put in it the soul of King David, and God gazed at the soul. and realized or saw the lace that he doesn't have his own life, his soul. And yet it was there, waiting, standing every day. It was before it every day. Like, realized that if it would leave the Garden of Eden, it wouldn't last. Even the Bara Adam Harishan Amar, once the human was created, Adam was created. So God said, Havadek Yume, that certainly now King David will be able to exist, because now I can take some years from Adam and give it to David. And then it goes through other of the patriarchs. Also, there was like 5 years given over to Abraham, or gave Yaakov, and so on. And Yitzchak, I'm just seeing if they're all right. But I don't see the Zohar explaining why David wouldn't have had. Like, what was the cause why King David wasn't supposed to live? So that hopefully maybe we'll look up some other time, okay? Or if I find it over the week, I'll share next week. Vald. So that is, by the way, before I forget, just to give you over, because we're giving over from the Baal Shem Tov, if I recall, there's a great vart from the Baal Shem Tov, or from the Magid, in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. Very simple, but very, very so true. Bereshis bara Elokim. The first thing of the Bereshis, the first thing that we are to do, bara. What does bara mean? Bara, like we have with a hey, bara, like bara kachama, means to be clear, to shine. Is to what? Bara Elokim, to reveal and shine Elokim, Getlichkeit, godliness, Es Hashemayim Ves Aretz, both in the higher realms of reality, heavenly areas, and he also, and specifically down here on earth. All right? So it's not just a narrative of that God created the world, but it's a message for us that we should emulate in that way and do our work in this creation, which is to make it shine. You know, the great artisans will make the beautiful vessels and all the engravings and all that. And what are we supposed to do? Just, you know, in a way, we have it easy. All we need to do is just to make sure the silver stays sparkling. You know. So may we, Mamish, may this again for this week also gracious. May this bring great illumination in our lives too. And right, there's different. So all these different vertalach flooding into my head. Bereshis, also the word Bereshis, it's also a compound of bara shis. God created not just 6 days, but 6 sefirot to create the world. Right. For other places says the word Bereshis is yira baishis, to have some humility. Boshet, right? To bring some that the way when we set out to do the work and can be connected with the divine, there's a state of to know our place and to have a little bit that grounding and setting forth of humility, and even being quote unquote embarrassed, ashamed to vis-a-vis the source, the divine. That in itself keeps us in check to get to do the work appropriately. And also, of course, we have the word Shabbos in there, right? In Bereshis, right? Beis Reish Aleph Shin Yutaf. So you have, and you right, whatever way you want to read it. Yirei Shabbos, fear, or and so on. So it's already at the very beginning. It was all set up about Shabbos too. If you remember when we spoke a couple of years ago about the nature of Shabbos and how it's connected to tainuk, to bliss or pleasure. He said that even before the artisan begins creating, right? What is the drive, motivation of the artist to create a piece of art? Is to get a tainuk, a pleasure thereof. So even before it's actually made or certainly completed, even at the very beginning, even at its conception, there's already an innate or an nascent, at least, element of that bliss that will come. It just is not revealed yet, because if it is openly revealed, then we would have what we know in psychology as wish fulfillment. We'd almost feel like it will sap the energy, the creative energy that's supposed to go into the art piece, because we would already be living out, at least psychologically, some of that as if we've done it already. But no, therefore we have to suppress that desire for that bliss, tainuk state, to get the work done. And then come Shabbos, then we can go, love that, and be immersed in the tainuk. But again, to even conceive it and begin the work, there has to be an initial concept of the tainuk, right? And wanting to have the tainuk. So that initial embedding, which leads to the motivation of all creation, was for there to be the Shabbos and the work and all that, the rest. So so already in the very first word, at the beginning of creation itself, you already have Shabbos set in. Also, Shabbos by definition means a day of the week, which means time. Time itself is a creation. I think we mentioned this in the past. I also gave a class, a lecture about Yom Kippur. We discussed it then. This was more in person. Right? It says that there were 10 utterances to create the world. The Mishnah says, "Basar Maimaris Nivra Elam." If you count in the Mmsh, you'll only find 9 times that God says, right? Where's the 10th? Gemara says, I think by the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that Bereshis Nami Maimer Ninhu, that even the first word, Bereshis Bara Elokim, that itself is one of that is the 10th, or you could say the first of all of the sayings. That Bereshis itself, what is it? What's the pshat? What does Bereshis mean? Means in the beginning. Beginning implies time, that we're constrained by time, that there's a beginning, middle, and end. Like all good stories have beginning, middle, and end. Certainly beginning, that we're saying that there's a point of time where time is beginning. So the phenomenon of time itself was the very first quote unquote thing to be created. Right, we live in a world that spatial and temporal, right? And as we know, according to Einstein and the relativity, it's one fabric of the universe. It's the time-space continuum that leads us to 4 dimensions. That's why the world, the universe, has its interesting relationship of, expansion and the whole theory of relativity, everything implied there. So according to relativity, time and space are part and parcel. Right? The velocity of light, of course, is related to time and space. At the same time, no pun intended, we still say that time preceded space in creation. Meaning, just the mere fact that space is, we relate more to something physical, tangible on Earth, like something like the ground, right? Space, right? I don't know if this space, the final frontier, as they say in Star Trek. So, and space has more of a concreteness. Time is more of an abstraction. I shared this when I spoke about Tshuva and Yom Kippur a couple weeks ago. Relate the aspects of time, that there's both impersonal, absolutist type of time. There's time. What is time? Is time what is measured by movement? Let's say the clock handle. The spheres, the planets in rotation, stars movement, right? So what is it? Is it the motion itself that's time, or are they just indicative, representing what is happening during that time of motion, right? Moreover, and this is related to another concept, let's say fluidity of time. That at time, especially when it comes to ourselves personally, doesn't necessarily, we don't always feel time being absolute. Sometimes a minute could feel like an hour, sometimes vice versa. People too, you see, some people tell you, okay, I'll see you in 5 minutes. Some people are literally there in 5 minutes. Other people could be 15 minutes still didn't show up, and then they could pop up and say, I thought you said 5 minutes. And, well, 5 minutes. It felt like 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So, meaning wasn't this, quantitative definition of time. And in fact, this was a great debate exactly 100 years ago. Has anyone heard of the French philosopher Henri Bergson? So Henri Bergson began off as a mathematician, in fact, in the late 1800s. Incidentally, he was the great-grandson of a famous Chassid woman, one of the women leaders of the Hasidic community, actually being a philanthropist. Her name was Temerel Bergson. I think during Polish Tish, I think in the past they spoke about her. And Heilige Temerel financed the courts of, I think, Koznitz and Peshischa and some others, and became was part of the elitists of Poland, especially for a Jew. Yeah, Aaron, I don't see the link in the chat yet. I'll do it, the footnote. All right. So this Henri Bergson, already early in his life, and this was a main theme of his philosophy, which was related to his notion that there was this elan vital, like this force or flow of life that sort of flows through us. Incidentally, Rav J.B. Soloveitchik was very influenced by Bergson, and I think Soloveitchik's thesis was based on Bergson's philosophy. So one of the main ideas of Bergson's philosophy was that in addition to there being this absolute notion of time, there's what he calls la durée, the duration of time, which is, like we mentioned, more of this amorphous state of time, which we tap into and out of. It's non-linear, it's more experiential, it's more immersive, yada, yada. And in fact, so exactly 100 years ago, this was several years after the theory of relativity came out and was gaining hold all over, that the more senior Bergson started a polemical correspondence with Einstein and basically critiquing Einstein for making time such a prosaic notions with, impersonalizing time. That time is just this interaction of different objects of, orbiting around each other or in relation to each other, right? Like when we say Einstein says that time is relative, let's say, doesn't mean it's relative, that your time is different than my time, right? He's talking on the grander, absolute, more objective in the physical phenomenon reality. In other words, the relativity of all physical phenomena and the motion of right, the planets, the stars, what have you, that it's absolutely, meaning it's objectively relative. It's not a flaky relativity. Oh yeah, anything goes relativity. No, there's a certain specific quantitative way that it's relative. So that is what Bergson was critiquing, taking out the whole soul, so to speak, of time. Of course, Einstein responded, "What do you want from me? I'm a scientist." The way he's saying, and remember, relativity wasn't actually proven in the laboratory all the way into, I think, the 1950s or 60s. So it was still something you could sort of debate because there wasn't that irrefutable, tangible evidence there. But still, Einstein was adamant that his approach to, was that this is the way it is in reality and all phenomena. And it went back and forth over, I think, then 1922, and then later also throughout the years, I think even a couple decades later, but each wouldn't give in to the other. But ultimately, the historians of science, looking back, do like to see this debate of the nature of time between Bergson and Einstein as more or less the beginning of the end of the co-equality, at least, certainly not the dominance of philosophy over science. Until then, philosophy would still take on science. If there was a discrepancy between some philosophical notion and something scientific, it's still argue it, debate it. But after this, and especially after once relativity was shown to be true, the value and importance of philosophy and its veracity to explain our material world, at least that part of philosophy, lost ground. And now we live in a time where certainly, science is I won't say king, but it's given so much more value, right? Like how many people these days are philosophers versus scientists? It seems like even in academia, it's like that. Back in the day, everyone tried to have basic foundations in philosophy. People were, even in their, liberal arts education, had to go through classics or even the Renaissance period all the way to modern time. It seems like philosophy is less a pursuit these days. People just want, even more towards the engineering areas. But actually, just pointing out that there is a greatness to philosophy, and we shouldn't discount it, and it's very important. And that leads to another definition, in fact, for the first word of our Pasha, the whole Torah, Bereshis, in the beginning, right? Bereshis in the beginning. And the Targum Onkelos says Bereshis, I think he says Bikadmisa, right? Let me look it up. Yeah, Bikadmi. All right, so in the beginning, it's the same word at the very origin. However, there's another Targum called Targum Yonasan ben Azil, or Targum Yerushalmi is based on it too. If I recall, he translates the word Bereshis as B'chuchmasa, with knowledge. That means that there's a certain cognizance, awareness, even knowledge itself is the origin of all of creation, right? God's gnosis, as they like say, is what leads to the creation. Kabbalistically, the bechokmasa of creation is actually that which precedes the chachma itself, and that is keter. All of creation is coming through the conduit of keter, the earth above or pre-sphera state, and then channels through. So this is all, again, so this is showing how even in the first verse, there's all these notions and then great themes, very 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 serious, big themes here. What is time? What is creation? Shabbos. So that's the time. That's the idea here. That gracious. That already the very beginning of creation. It is. We're already invoking not just time, but sacred time, Shabbos time. And it's still in a state, in this first verse, it's still a pre-verbal state. That's, as mentioned, there's only 9 actual places where it says God said. Gracious, it doesn't say God said. Why not? So it says in the Kabbalah Chassidus, because that very beginning of creation is like the thought state. It's like God said it internally. Didn't need to openly admit it, say it openly. It was still on that more non-tangible state. Also, the Ramban, Nachmanides, on the first 2 verses of the Bible, the Torah explains that this represents this whole thing. God created heaven and earth, and the earth was chaos and tohu vavohu, meaning that this all represents. We know the world is created with 4 elements, right? Earth, fire, air, water. We love singing different rainbow songs to it, maybe for another time. I'm just not in the mood of singing tonight for some reason, so my apologies. Maybe next week. So but the Ramban says, even before God created the 4 elements, there was actually the 5th element was created. I don't know if you saw that movie years ago, The 5th Element. I think Bruce Willis is in it. And they find some ancient Egyptian. Excuse me. Let me just drink some. I'm muting myself. I need a cough. Okay, back. L'chaim. Yeah, a lot of singing and getting hoarse over the last week or 2, couple weeks. Okay. So, according to early ancient philosophy, like classics, talking Plato, Aristotle, what have you, there is the 5th element is called Hayuli. Hayuli means a primordial amorphous substance. There are 2 ways to look at it. Either something that is actually tangible, that just has no form. Known as Chaimer Bilti Tzura in Hebrew, matter without form. Whereas the description is like a piece of like clay that has no shape before it's shaped or made. Or like the whole color scheme of paint all mishit together. And it's let's say, colorization state even. Or it could even be seen as something even more on a non-physical state, more not even tangible. Sometimes they call it tsura atzmit, form without, the opposite, form without matter. Be it as it may, this Hayuli is this pre-four elements element. And first, God created this amorphous, just the matter, like the material to make the world before it in the world. And then for the next 6 days, God worked it out in detail. So the general met, like the building blocks, so to speak, stuff, let's first say. And some would relate it to the word either. There's the word avir we have in Hebrew, which means like air. Avir, and it's different than ruach, which we say is for one of the elements. But avir, aleph, vav, yud, resh, another word could be, doesn't just mean air, it means a supernal, ephemeral state of being, of spirit, and where, right? I suppose also ruach you could translate more like wind, and avir more like air. Almost the word avir and air sounds almost like the same. And avir and the word ether also, right? So the ether, E-T-H-E-R, until Einstein's theory, there were those, even like Maxwell, I think, late 1800s and others, they spoke about an ether to explain gravity. There was a pre-defined state of into the world, and that is the source of it all. So this is all coming from this idea of there being a fifth element. So eventually, so that is all just day one happening. And it's similar also to the way it unfolds Kabbalistically through all the various dimensions. That, right, we know the world emanates, or the infinite, the world was created through the emanation, as we said before, of the Ein Sof, infinite light, through the Tzimtzum and the void thereof, into creating the Kav, the line that comes down. And that animates all the worlds. But in a way, it goes through different stages. So the stage, when the world is in that pre-tangible state, so the Hayuli is related to I think to the world of Bria, if I recall, where it's Chaimer Bilti Tzura, matter without form. Right, so before Bria, in this realm of the world of Atzilus, there is no real definition of anything, not even of Hayuli, not even any element. It's just all submerged. All phenomenon is part and parcel. Wasn't even defined. Wasn't even expressed yet to be any entity. Wasn't even expressed yet within the Godhead, within the source. We do speak about that there were sphirot embedded deeply at the very earliest stages of the infinite light. It's known as 10 sphirot hagnuzes min ha'atzila, concealed in the emanator. Still, it doesn't. There is nothing comes out until it goes through not only the Tzimtzum, it comes down to the lower realms. So Bria represents the state of ultimate, total Hayuli. Then the lower world, Yitzira, is when physicality acquires, or all phenomenon requires what is known as Tsura Klalis, general form. Okay, general form that there's already certain definitions, but it's not articulated in detail. And that happens in the lower world of Asiya. Then it's fully defined. On soul levels, in fact, angels are mainly in Yetzirah, or Asiya. And when we say Asiya, the lowest world of action, we're still talking about Asiya on the spiritual realm, not necessarily on our physical realm yet. Not the Asiya Gashmi, it's physical, but even Asiya Ruchni. At least, it's like the soul state of our physical world, right? So right. So for example, the Tatra and such are usually represented in the Tzira or Asiya. The souls of humans are actually mainly in Bria, the world higher. That's why the souls are higher and on the hierarchy of world dimensions than even angels, even though angels are spirits without physicality. But the actual soul level of the human is actually superior. In fact, we use the angels serve us to ascend, to get higher. It's the propulsion of the angels, and also represented by the Kisei HaKavod, the honor, that helps us elevate from the dimension of Bria up into Atzilus, especially during Shabbos, right? That's what's happening Shabbos. So all of this, all these, whether we're looking at creation in a more like scientific way, or more Kabbalistic way, or philosophical way, or Hasidic way, what have you, it's all up here in these very first verses of the Torah. And in fact, there's Sfarim that go on, whole books just on the first couple of verses of the Torah. So, yeah. So in a way, we could live Bereshit for a long time. Let me just look at the chat. Welcome, whoever tuned in. The last, what have you, half hour. I saw some tuned in and tuned out. We had even someone tuning in from Australia. Thank you. Okay, so Aaron shared with us more sources about King David's acquiring 70 years, and also, yes, Aaron's mentioning the film. Deeply pure respect for such on the of Rosh. Yes, there is some of that, the Rosh part also. It says, yeah, there's also the word Asher. Rosh and Bias, right? If Reish, it would be the head, and Bias also home, and there is that very notion. In a way, there is that cognitive state. I think that's what you're implying, Jonathan, right? That psyche, thinking.
Yes.
God thought up the world almost. All of it in his will, the machshavta in his thought. So there's the head notion of creating the world. And then you have the bias to create the home, a residence, a habitation down here. As we say, a dira b'tachtayim, a dwelling place down here on earth, all the way down here. So this is all certainly yeah. So again, we have the end product, the intention of the creator already, and that already implied at the very beginning. Any good series? I don't know if you know this. They say. So Rabbi Sachs quoted this recently. He says, like from Chekhov, if you're going to have a gun on the stage in the first scene, it has to be used for something. Meaning, you set up early in the storyline what you're going to use forward. So God is already putting it in here about the 6 midos, about Shabbos, and about creating the home already at the very beginning. Okay, Bob. I'll just throw in one more cute vart about Bereshit Bara. And this happened when I wasn't feeling well in yeshiva. My Rosh Yeshiva told me once that I wanted to come to learn, and he said, "No, stay in your room, get better." What about learning? It says, look, in the Torah, the first words is the Reishis Bara. The first thing bara is to be healthy. Okay. So,
Nice.
May we all be good mamish, have a gesund, and be so really fortified so we could do all the work that we need to. And all the way and going all the way through till we're created. And then that leads to Shabbos. To Shabbos, which is why we're all here. And why we're right. That's our main thing. So this is what I'm feeling to do. I mentioned this Hasidic discourse that I actually was there when the Rebbe said it in 1987. As the yeshiva, part of in 770, part of being a chassid by the Rebbe in Fabrengen, and I had a place in Fabrengen, and all that. So I remember. So the Rebbe said a maimer, Hasidic discourse, on the words "Vayechulu Hashemayim," and right, which is also we say every Friday night at Green Kiddush. And as mentioned, giving three interpretations of the word Vayechulu. So maybe let's look at that, and then let's just maybe talk about Shabbos. We could either do that or speak more about, or just go into other more Chassidish svarim. But the Chaver, do you want to look at this mimer about? Does that interest Chaver here? Yeah. Okay, I'll seduce you with the following.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very good mimer.
Okay, and I'll seduce you because like a few months ago when I was making kiddush for my parents, what have you. So the nigun, a Chabad nigun came to me, and it fits well to Vayechulu. So even though I said before I wasn't in the mood of singing, but for this I'll sing. And so sing the Shamil nigun to the words Vayechulu. Okay, and this is how. Vayechulu Hashemayim ve'haaretz v'chol tzevavam nayichal Elokim b'yom hashvi'i V'achtoya sherasam V'yishbos b'yom hashvi'i Mikol melachtoy asher asam Vayivarech Elohim es yom hashvi'i Vayikadesh Yisrael Ki yivoy shavasmi kol melachtoy Asher bara Elohim lasoy. There it is. Right? It's a famous song, Shamil, which is about the song of the soul coming down to earth and then returning to heaven. Metaphor with the story of the 1800s, the great warrior who fought the Russian army, Shamil, and then was tricked to coming down the Caucasus Mountains range where he was running his fiefdom. Was placed in prison. Then he was yearning to go back to his homeland up the mountains. So too, we come from the great top mountain. Our souls come down and yearn down to the valley, and we yearn to go back up. And in a way, this is related also to Shabbos. Shabbos is all about elevating the soul, going up. and getting to a higher realm. Like we were talking before, the mati v'lei mati, to reach up as high as we can and then come back down and back up again. And that's the cycle we go through. Shabbos, we go up the Ratzoi, and then comes Motzei Shabbat. That's the Shov, the return. Right? So now that we've gone through, all the couple of years learning about Shabbos, and now that lately we've been dealing with the Motzei Shabbat, that is, again, that's the other side of the coin. That after the flight up, we have to bring it back down, come back down, right? Apply it, ground it. That's Mmsh Shabbat. So before we get there, let's look in some Chassidus. What is the Bayachul Hashemayim? What is this ending? All right, let me see where I can find the map. Oh, I found it. Okay, so I'm again, we're not going to read all the words, but I will share screen the text so we can at least follow it in it. Now I do have a better. This is an older version of the same mimer, but I think it's the same words because I have it in this book form here. I don't know if you see. This is a more recent version of the same mimer, but yeah. Okay, so let's look at it. Oh, here we go. It says, and God finished. The word for chulu, we can say it's finished. God finished creating heavens and earth and everything. Right? So he says it's the termination, and that and this came, what was the final part of creation that God completed was creating the human, right? And as we know, the famous Midrash, God didn't create the human first because God wanted to create. First make the setup and then bring us into a ready-made world. Okay. But now there's another type of Vayachulu. And this is that it is the word kiloyin v'tainuk, bliss itself. Kiloyin is like the word to expire. Like when we say someone has kolos hanefesh, expiration of the soul, ecstasy, and to such an extent where the person passes out, heaven forbid. So that is kiloyin, where the soul is so overwhelming, it cannot be contained in the physical anymore. So that is that kolos hanefesh kiloyin. So we see that the word Vayachulu, another meaning is this achieving a state of bliss. Especially being as all the world was so great, amazing, with Tov Ma'od, that's great. So therefore, the Rebbe says here, that's why we begin Kiddush every Friday night with these words Vayachulu, right? But we don't just say Vayachulu, we start with Yom HaShishi, 6th day. Why? Because this state of reaching this state of ecstasy and tainuk and bliss through the creation comes dafka when it's finished completely on the day, 6th day, and the creation of the human. Right? And that even elements of weekday Yom Shishi is also serves to the bliss of Shabbos. I'm just reading the important parts and related to what we're right. We're not learning through the whole thing. We're just like skimming it and picking up what's related, what's the pith of it. Actually, I think that's the main part over here. Just wanted to show. He goes in great detail how it's connected to creation of the whole world and Rosh Hashanah, concealment, and coming to a revealed state. But actually, come to think of it, I think we got the whole point. Right. That the Yom HaShishi means that once we finish completing the work of 6 days of the week, then we could reach the state of Aichulu, total bliss and ecstasy. Okay. Goodbye. So, I mean, that was actually shorter than I expected. I'm just feeling to keep it more connected to the theme of Shabbos, even though the Parsha could go off to a lot of other things. We could also speak about things like the tree of knowledge, it's a das, and other. But let's stick to the theme of Shabbos because that's what we're here for, and also because we didn't speak about Mitzvah Shabbos in a while. So looking at the clock, I said initially maybe we're going to be a little shorter tonight. Let's see. I think still we'll be a little shorter tonight. So we'll discuss at least continue our great saga about Mitzvah Shabbat. So we mentioned before, maybe I have an idea. Maybe let's look at text from the Parsha where it speaks about the soul coming into the human. All right? It's chapter 2, I think, right? No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Actually, right? Okay, let's look at a couple places. First it says that God says Nasa Adam on day 6, right? Let's make a human b'tzalmenu kidmuseinu in our form, our image, and so on. And we know that according to especially philosophers like the Rambam Maimonides, this idea of image and demos also means something of similarity. These are all references to more of the spirit, the soul, spirit, or intelligence. Before we continue, just Jonathan, I'll just tell you as of what you wrote in the chat. That and basically it's both, okay, and there are places in the Zohar that Jonathan is asking in the chat, is the 6 days there to serve, to be in the word in order to achieve the elevation that comes to Shabbos, or is the Aliyah, that high state of Shabbos there to serve us through the weekdays? So you could see it in the Zohar too. It's discussed in both ways. The Shabbos is not a Shabbos if there's not the 6 days beforehand that we really work it out. Like no one really appreciates vacation unless you work hard, right? And then also Shabbos itself infuses us with the energy to be able to make it through the subsequent 6 days. There it is. Okay. So back to our parsha. So we have already, when it says here that God created the Adam, the human, some say that is already a reference to the soul, but you don't see it openly in the verse Torah here. Someone could just mean the body, in fact. See what Rashi says. Rashi says on B'tzam, God created B'tzam B'tfusa Asumli. With the special template that the human was made. I suppose the way we are, 2 eyes, a nose, ears, bipodal, and all that. Selim Diyakin Yetzer, it says it's an image like it's the creator. And also Zachar Nekeva, it's created male and female already initially, which is so the question is, what do you mean female? I thought the female at Eve was created later, right? The famous Adam's rib. So what's going on here? So actually this is a source brought down in Medrash and in Gemara that originally Adam was du partsufit, it was almost like a Siamese twin connected back to back. And the removal of the rib was the splitting, was a surgical separation of the male element from the female element, of the bigendered original human. That severance of the two gender is called Nisira in Kabbalah. So but originally there was this male-female in one body created. That's why it says bara isa, even though it's both. I mean, here it says kim bara isa, it in singular and then plural because there were both elements. But but when it comes to the actual soul, animating that is the next chapter. After Vayichulu. And even mentioning right, that there was a whole land here, but the only missing element, piece of the whole puzzle of the world was the human. So what did God do? Adam afam Adama. No, here it doesn't say bara, created, but yitzer, formed. Meaning, yes, it was already a state of human, but it just wasn't animated yet. It wasn't given that form, that spirit form. Then God blew into the nostrils the soul of life, and then the person became a living being. And I think the Chassidish Taich and the Maggid is blow spirit, the holy teachings, into anyone that animates the person. Okay. So here we have the very first place where it speaks about soul. Soul in human b'chlal. And again, this is happening Friday afternoon. So there's this soul element. At the same time, it's right. So in a way, when, as we'll see, the sources that there's this notion that we have a neshama yisera, an extra, quote unquote, whatever, as we'll see what taich is, the meaning of yisera, additional soul means. But in a way, this is a repeat of the original infusion of soul into Adam, to the human. And we go through it every Friday afternoon, especially with our preparations for the extra soul. Extra soul. Okay. Now, what is this? Okay, so we have soul. Of course, we're living. Come Shabbos, we say that there's extra soul. Now, what does this mean, extra soul? So again, as mentioned, tonight I'm a little bit feeling text-oriented, and I think this will be good to set up. And then we could, if we need to discuss it more in the future, we could do that. Because understanding what is this extra soul will also help us understand what happens when Shabbos leaves, meaning that we give up this extra soul. And also has to do with an important part of Havdalah that we do every Saturday night. So let me see if I could find the Gemara. This is what we'll do. We're going to look at a Gemara too. And then we're going to then we're going to look in some Zayhar, okay? And then we'll see. We go from there. So the first piece, the place we'll look in is Gemara, the end of Tractate Tainus. This is the same Gemara that we looked at, if you remember, Tu B'Av time. We went through very interesting Gemaras about Tu B'Av. So in this same Gemara, it speaks also about, parenthetically, it comes in about Shabbos. And actually, here in Safari, they also have some English translation of some stuff. So let me highlight that. So we could look. First, there's a discussion of who the priests, what specifically they would focus on prayers for every day of the week. Okay. And fasting when different communities would fast. And then it says that they would not fast Friday afternoon because it's before Shabbos, and certainly not Shabbos. So now the question is, what is let's look over here. The Gemara asks, what is the reason that do not fast on Sunday? Rabbi Yochanan says, due to the Christians, the Sunday is their day of rest, and they would claim that even Jews ascribe significance to such a day. Okay. Shmuel ben Nachmani says, because Sunday is the third day of creation of the human, was created on Friday, and third day of recovery from a wound or sickness, in this case, one's very creation, is considered the most painful. So you don't fast. Now, Reish Lakish says, the reason why we do not fast on Sunday is mipnei neshama yisera, because of the extra yisera, extra soul. We'll soon see the way Rashi interprets neshama yisera. The Amar Reish Lakish, for Reish Lakish, said, Reish Lakish, famous teacher of the Talmud, son-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish used to be a highway robber until he saw the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan, which he realized came from his learning, and Reish Lakish became one of the great teachers, a great teacher. So Reish Lakish said, "Neshama yisera nitul leiba Adam b'erev Shabbos." A surplus soul was given to Adam on a Friday afternoon, this very time we're talking about, on Shabbos, erev Shabbos. And then what happened? Might say Shabbat night l'maismenu. But then came Saturday night, and that extra soul was taken from it. Shenemar, as the verse says in Exodus, it says, "Kivay Shavas." And on the seventh day, Shavas, God rested. Vayin nafash. Vayin nafash is you could say vayin nafash is like breathed, exhaled, right? Here in the English, he says, and rested. But nafash has to do with like became relaxed. They shoved it enough, But here, the Gemara Reish Lakish says that the word nafash by nafash is a compound, and you should read this word shavas by nafash the following: Kivan sheshavas, since one has rested, meaning the one has gone through Shabbos. Or one could say Shavas, that once Shabbos itself is Shavas, what's finished, then the person exclaims, Vai of the Nefesh. Whoa, I lost my soul. Right? That's the word Vai Nefesh is Vai Nefesh. Whoa, where did my soul go? I lost it. So basically, Sunday, we're still under the effect of having, missing our added Shabbos soul. So we're feeling drained, feeling low at a lower state. Right? It says here, weak from the sun. Okay, so that is what's most important to here. But now let's look at the Rashi on this. Rashi says, what is Neshama Yisera? Look to the right. Shenaitim Oisim Emenu. Right, let me see something. Right, okay. Shenaitim Oisim Emenu, that God is taken from him by the Cholish. So here Neshama Yisera sounds like this, it's an actual soul that is taken. What is Neshama Yisera? Second Rashi says, Shemachivim daite lachila ushtia, that we expand one's mind or psyche with eat and drink, meaning that Neshama Yisera is basically like a psychological state, according to Rashi. a state where we feel no constraints, no anxiety, no pressures, nothing squeezing us. But it's like we say in Yiddish, we're wide, we have expansiveness. So what? So according to this, and right, Neshama Yisrael means it's the one soul that we already have anyways. But on Shabbos, this soul that we carry on every day, this now Shabbos, it expands more, but it's still the same soul, just in wider range. Okay. Let me see if there's any more commentaries that could help us here. The Erie, let's see. No. And Bierstein goes. Benachanano, it's a short one. Mir Shimon Amar b'pnei Shemi shenitnanet l'mishkei lecha b'lishtaitz v'smeich l'sani kigiba b'shtis yayin. Saying that this extra added or expanded soul that's given on Shabbos, that gives us the energy to eat more, and that also brings us the oneg, the enjoyment and the joy of that we acquire on Shabbos. Okay, so that is one. That's one Gemara. Let me see if there's a couple more. If you do want to do any one Gemara here. I'm feeling. I think we don't have to go too much. And basically, there's more. Just so you know, there's other Gemaras that say that we say similar. No, not that Gemara. Oh, I think it happened. Oh, okay, I have it open already, so I'll just share you another Gemara. Gemara Beitza. The Amir Rabbi Shimon ben Makish. Neshami Yisrael Neisel Kadosh Baruch Hu Ba'adam Erev Shabbos. God gives Ba'adam, that doesn't mean Adam, but every human, like you and me, God gives us an additional soul, but really we see Rashi means an expansion of our existence soul, Eve Shabbos, and taken away, let's say Shabbos. Again, he repeats here, Shabbos by Nefesh is Kimish Shabbos by of the Nefesh. And here too, let's see what the commentaries say. Commentary. I don't know why it's not giving. All right. Anyways, that's the bar. Not need to go too much repetition. Wow. So we see according to Gemara and the Rashi certainly, and just no other commentators, that the idea of Neshama Yisera is not a second soul, but it's the soul that we have already in more expanded form. Okay. Now we're going to look at the Zohar. And as we'll see in the Zohar, that the Zohar says actually we do acquire a second soul. Okay. Let's start with... Okay. So we're just going to we're going to read some Zohar, different parts of it, and altogether we'll get the picture. What is this additional soul? What is this Neshama Yisera? Here, and you'll see how it's related also with Havdalah and all that. So before the Zohar here goes through the details of what it's like, what's happening when you make Kiddush at night, Kiddush at day, and all that. And then the Zohar continues. Lavasa denafik Shabta, after Shabbos leaves, departs, the human needs to make a separation between the holy and the ordinary. Amai, why? Because this is a crucial time, just when we're leaving Shabbos, that we still have the Shabbos energy in us and greatness. And we are at this time given permission that those subjects down here on earth, down here, are given permission to have control, dominion on things down here on earth. And also and that anything happening here in the world, to see its unity as it being in a sacred, holy way and place. And that down here, everything is infused with the supernal holiness, right? And that those down here are given the ability to discern what the unities of below from the unities from above, meaning that the earth down world-based ways of the unity and the permanence of the holy, versus and to separate it from the upper unity. If you remember when we were learning Kigavana, for example, we spoke about that there's the unity of making one below, then there's the unity of making one above. And then the whole aim of Shabbos is to unify the two unities, right? As we spoke about, the lower unity with upper unity. Here he's saying that at the end of Shabbos, where the human is already empowered to be able to talk and make a distinction between what's the upper unity and lower P. And then he continues, that this is also related to the blessing on Bari Me'or Ha'esh, on the fire. Said because all other fires are concealed on Shabbos except the one holy fire that's revealed during Kiddush. And when that one fire during Kiddush is revealed, all other fires become concealed. And that's the fire of the Akedah of Yitzchak, of Isaac's, is on the altar. So, and he goes in more detail about the fire, but we'll keep this for another discussion when we go more into detail about the fire. But the point is, I didn't realize it's actually what we're looking for a little bit later here. And here it is. I didn't look at this material for weeks. So please have patience with me. So then, when he goes through okay, so okay, I'm cutting to the chase. What he speaks about, he goes through various things that are happening when Shabbos leaves. We'll come back to it, and how it's related also to the smelling of the besamim. And that is the crucial point here, that the idea of the Neshama Yisera departing the body at the end of Shabbos, when say Shabbat, is the reason why we smell the good herbs, the spices, right, the besamim. Because the besamim, as we'll see, is supposed to relieve us from this loss of our extra soul or our expanded soul. It's supposed to be meshiv nefesh, return us back spirit. Like he says here, that when the Shabbos leaves, you have to smell the besamim, to return, to relax the soul, because there's this supernal spirit, what have you, and smell that is departing from it. Okay? And we're going to come back to how it's all related to the summon. I just wanted to find the Zohars that discuss specifically about the extra soul. The actual term, like having extra soul. All right, going here. Here we are. So here's one where we see Mamish, the Zohar connecting the besamim smelling with the surplus. Talchase. Come and see. This is like opening statement. Leis alma miskaya el al recha. The world cannot exist. It exists only because of smell, scent. From this scent that we're going to discuss, we could infer and understand other scents. Because when Shabbos departs, leaves, the salka nafsha yisera, and its extra soul leaves, vishta'aru nafsha berucha misparasha natzivim, and what's remaining is only the nefesh and ruach, because as we know, the main core of our souls is actually three parts. The lowest is nefesh, above it ruach, above it neshama. And so it seems like he's associating the what he's calling here nafsha yisera is actually what we were calling in the Gemara neshama yisera, and he's correlating it with that highest realm within the core of the soul, which is the neshama. So once the neshama, that extra leaves, then all that we're remained with is the two lower levels, the nefesh and ruach. And they are atzivim. Atzivim means they're like almost like depressed, melancholy, because the neshama left the upper level. So asarei chavda. So that is when this smell comes. And they come close together and make each other happy again. What is this smell? I'm looking back from before. He says that it's related to the hadas, right? The myrtle. There are those that use specifically myrtle for Havdalah. And in fact, if you remember, we were learning early on about the Arizal that there was a thing to have hadas and myrtle bundles for the meal Friday night a day. And it's related to the Gemara of Shemini Chai. So an old person comes preparing 2 bundles of myrtle for Shabbos and what have you. So there are those that use the myrtle on Friday night also for Havdalah. And that they have 3 branches, the myrtle. Right, and also we know the idea of the 3 leaves around for that dasim, right? Yes.
He spent once a Shabbos at the Kabbalah Center, and it was Rav Berg's birthday. And they had a dinner, and then we had shul all day, and we hung out. And he uses hadas for besamim,
right,
for Havdalah. But it's the first time I ever saw it. But
right.
It makes sense now.
Right. So it's mamish that's part of it. And here he's connecting it also. He says there's 3 branches, 3 related to the 3 patriarchs. But basically it's this these high myrtle besamim. This is what reinvigorates our extra soul. Okay, so that's one Zayar. Now we're going to go to another Zayar, also correlating Shabbos with the extra soul that we're talking about. So first, he says here that the Talmid Chacham, the scholar, the one who learns, is considered Talmid Kiyam Shabbos is like it's represented by Shabbos, that it doesn't have anything by himself. Nefesh the Talmid Chacham is Kriya Shabbos Makasa. The soul of the those that study Torah, scholars, are called Shabbos queen. Nefesh Yisera the Shabbos, the extra soul of Shabbos. Delay Nishmas Chaim, and its delight, its bliss, is what is known as the living neshama soul. The ruach sichli, and the spirit of psyche. The inun neshama yisera, and these they are the extra soul, surplus soul, ruach yisera, and these are so it's the extra soul, extra ruach spirit, al neshama v'rucha v'nafsha. So these are the ones that are in addition to the one nefesh ruach neshama that we have that operate the body throughout the weekdays. Come Shabbos, then there's that extra soul, neshama yisera, extra nishmas kol chai, which represents the soul of all living. Keser bereish tzaddik, like the crown on the head of the tzaddik, the Iyu Yom Shabbos, which is the Shabbos day. Behind neshama yisera tahaloka yudke, right? Like the last verse in Tehillim, kol neshama tahaloka. So it doesn't say kol neshama every soul, but kol ha-neshama, all the soul, right? What is this? All the soul. What is this? The soul. This is this soul, this extra soul of Shabbos, and that brings out extra praise and awareness of divine. So, what is Yud K? Inun Abba Be'ima. They represent the father element and the paternal and maternal elements of the divine. It's the Yud and K. And that's the highest states of divine beingness that is the source of all. And then it goes more into detail. Things of like the extra ruach that leaves from Eden, nothing, nahar denafim Eden. It's like represented by we also have in our parsha the river streaming out of Eden. And that waters the garden, right? And so he's saying that there's three parts: there's Eden, the source, then you have the river, then you have that's then flowing to the garden. So the garden represents the lowest realm of soul, the nefesh, extra nefesh. Then above that is the river, which is the ruach. And above that is Eden itself, is the neshama. And that's also Eden's related to the word onek. It's one more. It's like onek plus one, which is plus soul. That is Eden. All right. Eden. All right. So here we see, in addition to the teachings associating Shabbos with the scholars and all that, and here's another part. But what we're getting out of all this is that when the Zohar speaks about Neshama Yisera, it's not just an expanded one soul, but it's a whole new soul acquired on Shabbos. So let's look at another Zohar. It says, the Zohar first goes about when we are still in the state of exile, and how the various forces are in the way, both negative and positive, and how we could prepare ourselves to receive Mashiach, Messiah of son of Joseph. That God, he sits to the right of God, and in the exile of Ishmael, and so on. And then it says this is all about in the world to come, when Mashiach comes, that then too God will activate, bring up, the Yisrael will wake up a extra ruach spirit, Tesefes al Yisrael, which will be added to Israel. Like the verse says, Eshpech ruchi akabasa, I will pour my spirit on all flesh. Have a nightly sell neumin dama, and it will come down to Israel from all the nations. etc. So now he associates the messianic, the acquisition of the extra spirit in the times of Mashiach, he associates it with Shabbos. Kigamna the Shabbos, so like Shabbos, the Taisa B'Varnosh, Nefesh Yisrael b'Shabbos, that a person acquires an extra soul on Shabbos. The East Lane Ba Naicha, and it has great, Naicha is pleasantness or rest. I Ben Nefesh Yisrael, I Lane, East Lane Naicha. If he has this extra soul, then the person, the spirit is resting or is happy. Nukva. This is even on the feminine state. Or the more so on the masculine state, the higher levels. Then he goes on, and so that the great scholars of the Talmud. This set is all one. So he says, that the the righteous have this extra soul as even other times, but on Shabbos everyone becomes like acquires this neshama yisrael extra soul. Okay. And he goes more into detail that everyone, when he acquires this extra soul on Shabbos, it's all based on what we are throughout the week. If we are more like a chassid, a kind person, then our extra soul of Shabbos comes from the midah of chesed, of kindness, on that level. If we were like more gevura gibar, standing up and afraid of, don't sin, and then we're given an extra soul from gevura. And if we were more sincere, then our extra soul is from the midah, an attribute of truth, and so on, going through all the 10 spheres. And if one is wise, it's coming from Bina, or from Netzach. So it's very interesting how he just breaks it down specifically that we get this extra soul. So we see Mamish, he's talking about Mamish, extra soul. Okay, all right. So how is this connected to why we smelled the summon? Because scent, remember again, where does, like we just saw in the Parsha, how does the soul enter the human body? Through the nose, through the nostrils, through the scent. So we almost breathe, smell our soul into our body. God scents, right? There's that movie, Scent of a Woman. We could call it Scent of a Soul. That's what we're talking about. That it's mamish, it's olfactory, enters us. And therefore, in correlation, in order, once, whether we see the neshama yisera, whether it's just that when Shabbos leaves, this same soul begins to constrict and become, it's like the inflated balloon losing its air, and we could even start feeling down because of it. So then we smell the incense that's supposed to relieve us. It's supposed to bring us back into our bodies and to reinvigorate us, even though we have less soul energy now, to feel better. And even when we say that it's according to the Kabbalah and the Zohar, that's an actual extra soul, there too, all the more so, we need the soul therapy to keep us grounded. Yes, whose hand is raised? Who raised?
Hi, Baruch.
Hey.
I'm Harvey. Harvey the Citron. So I was just going to say two things that I learned a couple years ago about smell. One was that it was the most popular, like it appears in the Torah more than any other sense. and both in like quote unquote, not like, hey, when people say like good and bad, but like in terms of korbanot and in terms of like basamim and in terms of the Beis Hamikdash and in terms of like all these things. But the other thing, and it's like really powerful, like more than we realize, but which I think is funny because of the etrog. But anyway, but the other thing I was going to say is that we know like the brain, like if you lose your other senses, you still have like a smell, and like people that have Alzheimer's, they can still smell sometimes when they can't do other things. So I think it's so interesting. Like, there's something else going on about smell in the Torah. I don't know what. Right. And also I was just going to ask you, what's that guy's name who sells the 8 senses in Jerusalem in the blue glass jars?
Yeah, I don't know specifically. I vaguely know what you're talking about, but I don't know specifically.
Okay. The Begevet, no, it's not Begevet Ivrit, but okay. Yeah, but
it's related to the Kohen Institute?
I don't know. This is like 20 years ago from the West Coast, and he was a rainbow. I thought you might know. But anyway, so I don't know what else is going on with the smell, but I'm definitely curious. Like, why is it so prevalent in the Torah,
Right. Again, the word reach and ruach could be related because it's the most intangible of our sense in a way. Well, sight and vision, and hearing, maybe not, but smell is related to taste, right? It's connected. Smell is, we know evolutionarily, that the first of our senses to evolve are smell. Smell is also associated with memory. Famous Proust's, and that's related to what you were saying before about people even that losing other senses, but smell, it's deep. It also says when Mashiach comes, it says that God will infuse Mashiach with sense. Not just that Mashiach himself will be fragrant, but it says that Mashiach will adjudicate and figure out what's right, even let's say in a judging way, judgment, like what people are up to, what they did, it says not based on sight or what he hears, testimony, what have you, but just so smelling what is right, what is justice.
Whoa.
Smell, like, there's this in Yiddish we say, like, it says it's another connotation of saying when we sense something is right intuitively. Can't explain it, but you smell it, right?
Geschmack.
We have it, right? Geschmack. Well, I think we spoke about in the past. Geschmack in German means to smell, but in Yiddish it means to taste. So there's a connection there. But that idea of smell is deeply connected with Mashiach.
That's why when a person passes out, you give them smelling salts. You stick it in their nose and they come to.
Do that, come back. Exactly. And that's why also Yom Kippur, there was all this shmek tabak and also smelling salts going around.
Yep.
Yeah. It's really part of it. Potter Stewart, Jonathan's writing in the chats. I don't know what that is.
Oh.
Well, olfactory.
Oh, thank you. I have to come. Yes. I have to call my mom. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Baruch, you know Avraham Sand, don't you?
Yes.
I don't know him well, but I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? He's been to Berkeley a few times. I don't know if he was here when you were here, but he's a perfumer.
Oh, he sold the stuff also.
It was
yeah.
Avram Sand. Yeah, that makes sense.
And Leah.
Yeah, he's into it. Yeah. Who, Leah Golem?
His wife.
His wife.
Oh.
They lived in Oregon when I lived in Oregon.
It's from the
All right,
Moshav,
there we go.
like with the Moshav with David Miller.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
on the Moshav. Oh, David Miller's in the Moshav now?
No. But that's when he used to come to Berkeley, he would stay with David Miller, and they were both. He was. Now Avram was by the Moshav and David a long time ago.
Mhm.
They just had the country fair this week.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. And
The comment that I was trying to make earlier, can you hear me?
yes.
The comment that I was trying, my computer just zoned out again. But the comment that I was trying to make about Potter Stewart was that he was the justice of the Supreme Court who, in a case about pornography, said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Ah. So you're saying
So
you
this
know
is-
it when
this
you
is-
smell it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
I
for explaining.
spelled olfactorially wrong in the chat.
okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. Yeah. So
Well, it's funny. Why didn't they make that line in Shavuos when the Torah comes down? When you say, "I can see it," we saw what we heard, and we heard what we saw. They didn't put the smell in there. That's weird.
in
But maybe that's the entire point, that, the synesthesia doesn't pertain to the smell, the olfactory sense. It's just, sight and sound can get confused, but the smell is more powerful.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
distinct, and it wouldn't be confused. Okay.
Precisely.
we were with COVID, there were a bunch of people lost their sense of smell.
Oh, right.
And that was really disturbing because it affects something really deep, and it affects everything we see. People had less awareness of their tastes because of that. There were even certain situations where the family, like there was a family, everyone got COVID, they couldn't smell when there was a fire in their house. There's a reason why we're given this. It's supposed to be, even just for survival, it's important to have a good sense of smell. And I think there's a correlation, at least, between people who have better sense of smell and higher intelligence. Makes sense. I think it's sense, no pun intended. Because more wired in the brain of it. So blessing mamish. When during COVID, and there were some ceremonies we were doing, and we were very aware what we were talking about. And at that time, we burned sage or smell different aromas to bring back that mamish. That all cultures have that, right? There's frankincense. There's wherever other houses of worship, they use, like in India, they have the scent, right, the sticks and what have you.
Curry.
Something. And like you mentioned, Aviva, the whole reach nichoach, right? It's like sacrificial, right, aroma, that it's supposed to connote that too. That there's almost like a scent. But because again, it's taking from the physical and almost spiritualizing it. It's like this mist that departs from the physical source of the smell and reaching us beyond the constraints of the thing. And unlike sight and sound as much, but deeper, I suppose if you look under, at high magnification, it's probably little particles of something, molecules, something.
Well,
it's
I don't know
actually
if
entering us.
I don't know if you were in New York during 9/11, Baruch, but all my friends that were there, the main thing they talk about is how bad the smell was.
Yeah.
And, people know that from, it's like right now they're using dogs to smell in the floods in different like climate places to find people, than ways that it's more heightened their sense of smell than people. And I'm like, oh my God, this is seriously how it's working? Like, this is our method?
Mhm.
Like,
Well, dogs certainly have a really high, I forget how many times, like 1 million times more than a human or something. So certainly, yeah. So, and again, there's just the sound of the word itself, reach, which is smell in Hebrew, is so close with ruach, that the spirit or the wind that's carrying it. So it's almost saying that reach, smell, is the most ruchniut, spiritual state in the physical world. That's still something, So maybe that's why it's connected to activating, relaxing the soul. The soul in the body is, as we were talking before, is also that spirit realm that's within our physical existence. So it's almost that the smell is like a glue of the soul to the body, else the soul remains in the body. And also when that neshama Yisera leaves the body, it's able to relax the soul that remains in our bodies, from separation anxiety, if you want to call it that, or something. That come back to yourself, right? Also, when you smell what's happening, think about you're inhaling. That's what smell means. Inhaling means you bring air into the body. The lungs are expanding. You're letting it in, taking it in. It's that in itself, even if there wasn't any smell, even if we just did long inhale, exhale exercises, that would also relax us. So in smell, right? Well, the more so it's both the neshima, the breath itself, which is related to the word neshama, of course, and the reach brings the ruach in. So again, that's why we smell the psamim at the end of Havdalah, because that's when our extra soul is departing, and to bring it back, and to be that, and to be able. So it's two parts also. So it's not. So and it's both. Because here and here's what grounds the part. The whole point why we make Havdalah is to be the bookending of reminder and praising about Shabbos. So Friday night we make the first kiddush. That's to remind us, to remember to be aware in our psyche that we're entering Shabbos, and to sanctify it. And this brings us gladness, even joy, right? Then at the end of Shabbos, what's happening? We're making another blessing on wine. We call it Havdalah, which is what? As we were saying before, to take the Shabbos energy into the rest of the week. So the first Friday night is to bring in the Shabbos and bring in the spirit into Shabbos. The Havdalah is to take the Shabbos into the rest of the week, let's say Shabbat. But it's all an extension of an awareness of the positivity of Shabbos and the effect Shabbos has on our lives throughout the week. So to be in that state of gladness and happy, remembering the praise of Shabbos, that is, again, that is part of the Havdalah itself, Saturday night. So in order to be at our optimum in that state of joy and praise of and remembering Shabbos, despite the soul leaving us, that extra soul leaving us on Saturday night Shabbos, therefore we smell the psamim, the herbs. So this brings back a happiness for Saturday night. So we do not have this FOMO of that we're going to not have Shabbos anymore. But we could still, despite knowing Shabbos is ending, but still be able to be happy and positive and even praise Shabbos through that. And that again is what the Psalm is about, representing. Okay? So Baruch Hashem, so it covered, and at least we got to go get it and cover stuff about Motzei Shabbat. And there's more in the parsha, of course. We could speak all about the tree of knowledge and other things, but I'm just feeling not, as I mentioned before, maybe let's build our way up. Okay, next week we'll go more, etc., etc. So I'm calling it that more or less we're by Hulu, HaZoom, the Facebook, the whole internet. Okay, that we're coming to an end, at least to this session, but I do certainly want opening it up. If anyone has anything to comment or say, whether about Shabbos, whether what we were learning about Bereshis, whether it's about anything else. If anyone has anything to say, let me know. If not, I think we'll just say keep a simcha. Let me see if anyone commented it's saying anything out in Facebook land. And again, in addition to just being, the day after, a bit spiritually hungover here from Simchas Torah, also, I didn't, I was busy, Simchas Torah, so I didn't go through all the material as much as I maybe normally do. So I hope it was still satisfactory to everyone here. I Mmsh, if time permitting, and I would love to also talk about what we started speaking before about the whole idea that the human is set up to sin, and how that's related to the Eitz Hadat, the tree of knowledge, and Adam and Chava, and the snake, and all that stuff. But it seems like it's opening up a whole Pandora's box, the whole new area of discussion, which could go on for long. So maybe if we do want to discuss it, we could do it next week too. As we'll see that each parsha for me follows the other. I will end off with one thing at least, because this is connected with something that we're ready. It's so funny. It was like yesterday we were learning Bereshis and Shemot, right, together, and here we are. And that is related to Shemot, the idea of a name. That it says one main factor and one great thing right after the human was created, and what made the human stand out, Adam Rishon stand out, was the fact that he was able to correctly name all the animals. And the Medrash says that itself was a proof why the human had more intelligence and created, even more than the angels. The angels couldn't name the correct names, whereas Adam was able to. So there's a very great question. If we know, according, not even Kabbalah, you look in the Bible, in Cheskel, you see that angels themselves evolved from the supernal animals of the Merkava, right? The shar, the bull, the eagle, the lion, etc. That means that angels themselves are connected with animals. So wouldn't the angels know their source, know their names of animals? It's like it's part of their angelic DNA in a way, right? So why Dafka, the only human, Adam, was able to name this right names? So in short, the answer is that naming a name is not just putting a label on something. And naming a name is being able to show and express the correct quality, personality, state of the one thing being named. Moreover, it is that we're revealing what it really is on a soul spirit level down here. It's it's like what we said before, start off the great miracle of being able to merge soul with body. So too, the ability to draw down and show what is the source of this given animal or that given animal or that. It's not just that we come that like the angel, you're from that source, but you're more. You could be from a source, but you can't bring it down. And the human, who's a composite of both spirit and physical, Dafka, the human is the one who could bring down into the body, into the physical form of the animal, draw down and express and reveal what the animal really is. Meaning that it's only the human that can merge the highest spirit states with the lowest physical states. And this merging of spirit and physical, the spirit, through animal naming, is the preamble, foreshadow of what will ultimately be the Matan Torah, receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, which there too, as we've spoken about more than once in the past, was the merging of heaven with earth. And maybe that, again, just thinking out loud, maybe back to that part, the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, Bereshis, Bara Elokim et Hashemayim Haaretz, the first thing for us to do is to reveal Bara Elokim godliness in heaven and earth. It's not just to reveal the godliness in heaven and earth, but to reveal that heaven and earth are one. What is that one? Godliness. Okay. That's all that singularity that we're talking about, that unity that we saw in the Zohar mentioned. So may we mamish, and again, that's also in the name of our Parsha Bereshis, that from this beginning, may we go on to greatness and start off this year. And this, as we said earlier, the way we set ourselves up to Shabbos Bereshis this week, that's how hopefully we'll go the whole year. So may we start off, like the great marathons with supercharging, right? The first sprint, and keep that high momentum going through all the weeks and months to come. So thank you again, everyone. A good Shabbos. May Mamish, we have the greatest, highest Shabbos, because this is the Shabbos that's setting all the Shabbosim to come. And this is the Shabbos where we read about the very first Shabbos ever. And maybe Mamish feel the Shabbos like it is the first Shabbos ever. And it's like we like saying in certain circles, it's not just Shabbos, but the Shabbos, right? We get the state of bliss in Shabbos. We make it Shabbos. All right. So thank you, everyone. We're ready today, Yom Revi. We're ready, feeling Shabbos in the air. We could already smell Shabbos coming. Yeah. The smell of, I don't know if it's the smell of cholent and gefilte fish, but there's a certain type of special aroma, right? Because it's still Gan Eden. We know Gan Eden has its own special aroma. We must say that it's happening here too. All right. So call to. Thank you, everyone. So just before we part, I just want to say hello, goodbye to Harvey. I see he's tuning in. Hi, Shalom Aleichem, Harvey. Welcome. You just came in time to say goodbye.
I just got off the plane. I was in Chicago.
Oh, really? Wow. Welcome. Okay. I mean, honestly, I can't, it's going to be hard to give over everything. And it's anyways, right. We're still getting over Suchos Torah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll give you a very, very teich cuts there. We spoke about the idea by Chulu. The Chulu is not just finishing, but Klesa Nefesh, Kilya, and inspiration soul. And we went to all different ideas of what's Bereshis Bara, beginning of time creation, beginning.
By the way, the session got recorded, right? So
you could look it up. Yeah. You could totally. And also just, we did discuss towards the end also about how it's related with Mitzvah Shabbos is the theme, related to the idea of Neshama Yisera.
Right.
And that according to Gemara and Rashi, Neshama Yisera means it's one soul that's in a more expansive state. Right. And then, whereas if you look in the Zohar, we look at it sounds like it's like a second soul, it's an extra soul, or an extra level of soul.
Right.
And we connected it also with the Psalmim and how that relieves and brings it back from Havdalah, etc. Okay, Gavaldi, great to hear from you, Harvey. I saw you tuning in. I couldn't leave without saying Shalom Aleichem and hello. And it's a new year, and I gave over the wie mishtelt sich weg Shabbos Bereshis, also geht es a ganz Jahr.
Yeah. Okay, thank
maybe
you.
Maybe a ganz Jahr freilach, 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 a whole year happy, a whole year happy, a whole year happy, be happy, a whole year happy, a whole year happy, a whole year happy, be happy, a whole year happy, a whole year happy, whole year happy, happy we'll be, a whole year happy, whole year happy, a whole year happy, be. Good Shabbos, Jonathan. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Danny. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Steve. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Ariel. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Harvey. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, yours truly. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, everyone in the virtual and real world. And the whole world is sing the holy song of Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos. Woo! It's going to be a great Kiddush. I feel it already. Friday night. I'll be there. And remember, don't yet. It's the end. It's not the end. That's another interesting thing, right? We start Bereshis. It means beginning, and then we have Vaychulu end. So already just in the first chapter,
right?
Or actually from the first chapter going to the second chapter, we already have beginning and end. So maybe and that's the framing, and so we all have our beginnings, which are called Chaz Kadishes, and then we have our Seif. It says Seif Ma'isa b'Machshava Tchila. But what we do at the end is loops back to the very beginning.
Right.
And you weren't here, but mentioned also the word Bereshis has the word Shabbos in it, meaning the whole intention of it to come, of sacred time, is already from the very first moment of time. And that it creates the bias. Shabbos, bias, and Shabbos, right? Yeah,
right.
All right. Yeshukaya, or Reish and Shabbos, right? All right. Good Shabbos, everyone. All right. We're going off of Facebook.
Right.